It's really interesting. One of the things that I remember very much about the second wave in general was the fear of Jewish community of feminism, for example, and that it was going to push women away and we were going to lose these women to feminism. In fact, it was almost the opposite. What happened was that Jewish feminists decided to either reclaim some stuff or they pushed into the Jewish community and people who'd been outside of it, suddenly women saw that there was a way in because of these other Jewish feminists. I experienced a lot of homophobia when I came out. I came out around 1974. And during those middle years, I was sort of immersing myself in the YIVO. I was teaching in the summer program, so on. A number of things happened. I experienced quite a bit of homophobia, and I withdrew. And to some degree, I can't say, at the time, I thought I had really turned my back on it. But the opposite happened because during the second wave, everybody was telling their story. And my story, a lot of people said, this sounds so familiar. I come from a somewhat similar, not exactly socialist. Yeah, my parents spoke Yiddish. Tell me some Yiddish women writers. Well, I didn't know any. Here I had all this, I didn't know any. So in some ways, the fact that I got pushed into this, they pushed me right back in a way because people wanted, and here I was talking about the Bund and so on, and I didn't know a thing. So that pushed me back into sort of researching, and I remember going up to, and Aaron will remember this too, when he was working with Sharon Kleinbaum, like in 1980, 81, or whenever it was, going up there when they didn't really even have a building. I think they had everything in a dumpster, or I don't know what, they were trying to sort things, and it was just really the beginning. And trying to find, just give me a book that looks like it's written by, whose name looks like a woman. It's not an initial, but we know for a fact it's a woman. And that was how basically it started. I think Sharon wrote to me because she knew I was out, and she said, we'd like you to come up, and blah, blah, blah. And I did. I believe that was the first time that I read my poem, Etliche Werte von Mamalaschen, which I think had been published, but I'd never read it in public. And there's a really big difference between being brave on paper and brave in life. And I remember, I repeat this story because it's so true. It's totally true. I remember sitting there thinking, there was this audience, and I'm thinking, why did I have to say lesbianka 4 times in this poem? Like, wouldn't it have been good enough to say it once? Why do I have to get up and say this now 4 times? And I was really scared. I mean, people don't realize, it's, even now, people that experience and are afraid of homophobia, I mean, your adrenaline goes, your heart rate goes, you're really scared. So I read it. I did read it. And nothing happened. I mean, in fact, if anything, I mean, my experience with that poem has been that people react much more to the word kurva, which is whore. I mean, I read that in a couple of synagogues, and I thought the men were going to faint when I said the word kurva. I mean, they sort of, I don't know what they think about lesbianka, but so it was like I was pushed to do and look at things that I had not been told. I mean, I was sort of, every minority woman did this. They went back to their communities and they said, where are the women? Let me see where they've been hidden, where they've been buried, who's forgotten, who should be remembered. I mean, we all did that with our own communities of origin. And I did the same thing with the Yiddish. And so when I did with Melanie K. Kantrowitz, when we did the Tribe of Dinah, we highlighted Fradl Stock, who I'd never heard of before, and Kadia Molodowski, who I had, but I didn't even know that she wrote prose. And we published, I translated 2 short stories by both of them, and aside, I think, from Rachel Korn, it was like the first time that these people's prose was being, shown. So in many ways, they're intimately connected. And a lot of the people that were involved were gay. A lot of the women were lesbians. And I think altogether, I mean, I think there's been a very large proportion of gays and lesbians in the Yiddishist movement. I mean, I remember one time at Kles camp in the 90s where I don't know why somebody said this. They wanted a photograph or something, and it was like during one of the meals, and they said everybody who's gay, who wants to admit it, should go in that corner. And like half the dining room got up, and nobody, we didn't even know that I didn't know. I was like shocked. And so I think it's interesting that gays were drawn to this. Jewish gays were drawn to this particular legacy, and have contributed just so much. I mean, I have a photograph. I don't know, maybe you can take a picture of it. I don't remember what year it was. It was very early. There's a photograph of me and Lawrence Sklomberg and Yankel Salant and Jeff Chandler carrying this thing in a gay pride march called, I guess, Das Freiliche Volk, the gay, something, and then in English I think it says Yiddish gays or something. I'll show you the photograph. The Bridges made it into a postcard. So it was interesting the way I moved away and then the way I got pushed back. And I have to say, I mean, there was a lot of resistance. I mean, I think it wasn't, there's an enormous amount of protectiveness, I mean, of sort of like the three classic writers. Can't say that they were sexist. Why? I mean, why were they really, I mean, the only three men in last century who were not sexist? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter if they wrote pro-women stuff. Everybody wrote pro-women stuff. How did they lead their lives? What did they do about it? I mean, we all say, we're all anti-racist, but we accept the fact that we can't always, and we don't always put it into action, and it's very deeply ingrained. And socialists and Bundists were very eager to get women out from under what they considered restrictions in the religion. But once women were out in the secular world, they experienced the same sexism. I mean, so the resistance to criticizing, sort of Yiddish literature as being hostile to women or not welcoming to women or not valuing women it was quite strong. I mean, I remember somebody standing up, who I will not mention by name, standing up and saying that the only people who are interested in gender are lesbians, for example. I mean, this was at a Jewish Yiddish. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was just silly. But it was there. And the resistance, I think, to, at the time, in the 80s and 90s, people did not say that they were feminists. They either said, I'm above the fray, I'm this, I'm that. Now everybody's a feminist, now it's okay. But that wasn't so true. And I don't know, I mean, it was a hard time, but it was also a very exciting time because there were like people who were dying to have this information and who really embraced it. I mean, the Tribe of Dinah the fact that you could have a secular book, up until then, all Jewish feminist stuff had been sort of religiously observant oriented, and this wasn't. That was one thing. Then everybody said, I mean, in reviews it was interesting. They said that there was a gay anthology, which it wasn't. I mean, Melanie and I were lesbians, but we had a lot of straight. We were not intending to have a lesbian anthology. I think it gave people a way back, women a way back, for a lot of women who weren't interested in the Jewish feminist sort of religious revival or transformation, but were interested in the secular. And I think we provided that for them. But I can't honestly say that that's the direction I had planned to go in. I can't, I mean, I think circumstances pushed me there.